Welcome to BICG Webinar Series. We are glad to have you join us today to talk about strategy, the importance of strategy and scorecards, and the new capabilities in OBIEE 11g, Oracle's Scorecard and Strategy Management. Before we get started, I would like to introduce the BI Consulting Group team that is with you today. My name is Amy Mayer, and I am the founder and president of BI Consulting Group. And I have along with me Eric Jacobs. Eric is a director at BI Consulting Group, and he comes to us with several years of experience working with Dr. Kaplan and Norton at the Balanced Scorecard Collaborative. He will be sharing with you the importance of strategy management process, as well as how to approach defining and establishing KPIs and ensuring that they are tied into your organization's strategy and objectives. We also have with us today Steve Garcia. Steve is a manager with BI Consulting Group, and he has been working in the enterprise performance management space for over 12 years, with deep knowledge and expertise in the financial area of performance management. On that note, I will hand it over to Eric.
Thank you, Amy. Well, the first thing I'd like to do is kind of walk through the agenda for today and thank everybody for joining us. But what I'd like to do first is kind of set the stage and talk about a strategy management process, basically set the context for the Oracle Scorecard and Strategy Management. And I'm pretty sure you'll see as we walk through the process why you need a tool like Oracle Scorecard and Strategy Management, especially to start to understand people and how they align to executing your strategy. And then once we set the stage, we'll move on, and Steve will do a demonstration of the Oracle Scorecard and Strategy Management and do kind of a day in the life of a company called Eden Corporation. And we'll wrap up with some questions and answers so we get some feedback from the audience here. And also during the webinar, we'll be asking some polling questions and share the results real time with you, and just appreciate your participation in answering the questions as we go through the webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. This is actually something we did while we were at the collaborative and Palladium. But the key thing here is that companies who successfully, or themselves say they successfully execute their strategy, have a formal process, and that's the red box there, 70%. So again, the key thing is that, hey, it's great, I got a strategy on my paper, but I've got to translate it into a set of operational and action-oriented objectives and targets and initiatives. We'll kind of walk through that process today. But I thought some interesting comments from a survey that we did of about 140, 150 organizations in terms of how do they manage their strategy, or in essence, what do they not do when they execute their strategy. I'm just curious if you guys see the same thing kind of in your organization. And I know we're jumping a little bit early, but Brian, maybe we could just quickly ask that first question, which really asks, what is your strategy management process today? And do you have a formal or informal process? I'm sorry. The first question is, what is the biggest challenges you see today in executing your strategy? And I'm just curious if you see the same type of challenges that you see in the box here about management practice. So, Brian, can we ask that first question real quick? And we'll give everyone just 10 or 15 seconds here if you could just kind of answer that question so we can move on. All right. So Brian, why don't we go ahead and close the poll? So the second part of the survey was, what are the components of if you will, a formal strategy management process? And you guys can read as fast as I can, but the key thing is take it from paper and translate it into a set of actions that can be executed by the front line of your organization. Two is the initiatives are how are you going to change your basically your operating or your business model, and the updates, and this is where the KPIs come to date. What is a regular update of the strategy to account for conditions changing in the marketplace or product releases or whatever it is. And then reviews is that you have to actually do something with the information that you're getting, communicate often and frequently, and you'll actually see this in the OSSM product where pretty strong collaboration communication tools. The key part, at least in my experience, is aligning the organization, because people are highly focused on meeting the quarterly numbers. As they say, culture eats strategy for lunch every day. So, but the key thing is how do you align all the intangible assets to actually execute your strategy is a key piece to this. And then the HR says, hey, if I need to actually change my skill sets, if I'm moving my business model from this position to that position, a key part of that is I need the skills, competencies to actually achieve that vision. And then what is the plan to move the skill set from here over to there to, again, fulfill the vision. Finance, a real critical part is, the recommendation that we used to have is that you have something called StratEx, like OpEx, CapEx. StratEx is strategy, execution, or sorry, expenditure. Make sure that's an explicit piece of your funding process. And again, you'll see it in the tool, but that's a key thing is that you can now actually look at not only the scorecard, you can actually look all the way down to the Hyperion or the EPM tool set in terms of what is the funding status, if you will, of my strategy elements against the initiatives. And then by IT is, again, is the IT actually meeting the needs of the business, and how is that measured? So, yeah, that was actually, I thought it was kind of interesting in terms of what is the strategy management process and the success people have in executing the strategy with such a process. But real quick, I'm just going to kind of, again, set the context, but typically, at least the way we've always looked at it, strategy is about making choices. And number two, it's about changing your business model. And so often, you're going to perceive or have a gap, or like a BHAG there, big, hairy, audacious goals. Hey, these are the things that I need to change in order to move my business forward, to beat the competition, if you will, swim faster in the current than anybody else. But the key thing is about making choices that, hey, look, I can either go down the product leadership, which, by the way, has a certain set of KPIs in the way I run my business, or customer intimacy. So product leadership, you can think of Apple, for example. Customer intimacy, believe it or not, you can think of IBM in that manner, or somebody like that who, in terms of how they really get close to their customer, or like Oracle, for a matter of fact. Operational excellence, I can't think of something off the top of my head, but again, you run your business in a certain way to say, I'm going to be the best cost option in the market. So the value gap is, hey, there's a strategic shift. I got to change my operating model from this over to that over here, typically over a 3-year time frame. Now comes the part, how am I going to do that, i.e. your strategy? So the key thing next is I need to start to articulate the cause and effect. That's my strategic hypothesis that says, hey, I'm going to make these investments in my processes and my people and technology in order to achieve these target outcomes for customer value propositions, and if I satisfy the customers, I'm going to make money. So the way you look at it is that you actually build the strategy map top down, because you have to satisfy your stakeholders, but you actually execute it bottom up, right? Because it's people, process, technology, organization that drives everything else. So the other key thing to take a look at is this basically says, what are the critical or strategic processes that I need to focus on, i.e. strategic KPIs, as opposed to, if you will, call operational or mission critical. So everything's important, but not everything's strategic. So if I'm going down the product innovation route, then I'm going to have measures and targets that says, hey, how am I doing at new product introductions, percent of revenue as the result of new products, or how many new products or ideas are being generated into the product pipeline, if you will. So anyway, the strategy map is a great way to pictorially, if you will, show how am I going to, the how am I going to execute my strategy. Now, the what am I going to do, and then then leave it up to your organization in terms of how they're going to achieve these objectives. So I hope that's clear. So again, in this case, in order to grow earnings, I'm going to make these financial numbers. In order to do that, I have to provide innovative solutions, tailor my approach, and so forth. But in order to achieve these customer value propositions, I have to focus on these critical processes. In order to do that, I have to have the right culture with the right people and the right technology to run the processes, to create the value propositions in order to make the money. So once I have those objectives laid out, the next thing I'm going to do is say, how am I going to measure that am I actually successfully executing that strategy, predominantly as a form of communication, to say, hey, here's the way I'm going to measure, that my profitability, grow revenues, fewer in terms of fewer planes with a higher in order to achieve a higher return on net assets. I'm going to measure it in this way. What's the target? And you typically have a baseline target, and you have a kind of improvement targets. You may have a stretch target. That's really up to your organization, but you have to have a set of targets. The next thing, obviously, is, okay, what investments am I going to make into my business in order to achieve those targets? I.e., again, I'm changing my business model from this to that. And it's, again, separate from operations. It's the changes I'm making to operations to fulfill the strategic vision that I have. So you can see some of those investments for customer and process and people and technology. Again, this is just an example to say, how am I going to communicate my vision to the front line? Those are the people that actually execute your vision. How am I going to measure success? And obviously, the way you define the measures, right, are going to define the behaviors that you're going to get from your organization. And then again, how am I going to execute the changes or the investments into my business? And again, the key thing is also looking at the way you're going to fund those initiatives. So once I've laid out the kind of the corporate scorecard, like here's the roadmap, I now need to cascade those objectives, measures, and targets down throughout my organization. And this is like KPI alignment, so that, you know, one of the things you don't want is KPIs that conflict with each other. It says, hey, great customer service, but at what cost? Well, I don't want a product strategy that conflicts with the customer service strategy. So that's one way you got to start to rationalize and align your KPIs against your strategic measures. So, but the other key part is to make sure that people on the front line have a set of objectives, measures, and targets that are relevant to them. So, you know, if I have a customer service objective at the top, you know, customer support over here versus sales versus marketing, they all have to have a customer service objective, but translated to so that it's relevant to them. And I think you'll see that today in the tool, how you can actually link these things together so you have almost like a personal scorecard that's tied back up to a corporate scorecard or a divisional, you know, business unit type scorecard. Pretty sure I've probably forgotten the poll question by now. So the next part is, like I mentioned before, is aligning your strategic measures down to your operational KPIs, or in essence, aligning scorecards and dashboards. And again, you'll see it today, but it's in the same product. But the fact is, at the highest level, I may have an objective here: be agile and effective in the development of customer-oriented solutions. So I'm going to be kind of customer intimate, you know, combined with product innovation. I measure that in terms of an R&D effectiveness and time to market. But then I've got to take a look at, okay, in order to achieve this objective, what are the, if you will, process-oriented critical success factors? And then given that, I'm going to start looking down at operational measures. The way you actually do that is you take a look at the process, and there's critical junctures. You can see these lines, you know, with each process stage, and you take a look at, you know, what are the critical steps and what are the critical KPIs for each of those steps, and you use that, use something like value driver analysis or a driver tree to say, you know, what are the things that make up this process steps, and what are the critical success factors. That's what I'm going to measure. And again, the key things you keep in mind is, if I'm really looking at, you know, customer intimacy, that, you know, the big measure, I'm going to start to align those operational KPIs. So I'm not going to look at all of them, but I'm going to look at that subset of operational KPIs that are important to my strategy. So, Brian, let me pause here just for a second, since I apologize, I've missed a couple of poll questions. So let me ask a couple right in a row here, since I missed some. But could you open up the poll and ask question number 2 real quick? So question 2 you'll see pop up is called, what is your strategy management process today? And so I do apologize that I've missed a couple of those. So we'll kind of go quickly so we don't run out of time. But if you could just answer that, you know, do you actually have a formal process today that's a closed loop? And typically, formally, you start to blend together strategic, operational, and financial planning, because, you know, the interplay is pretty strong. All right. I hope people have enough time. If we could move to the third question. How well do your employees understand your strategy and their impact on your strategy? So that really kind of relates back to the alignment process. So it's great that, if you will, you have a boardroom and a great strategy document, but, you know, to be effective, you've got to get to the front line to say, hey, if I'm a driver and I've got a customer satisfaction strategy, what's my impact on it? By the way, how am I being measured? And does my compensation align to my strategy? All right. So let me, I hope people have enough time to answer those 3 questions. And I'll move on to the last slide here for myself here, is the last piece, and this is so critical, is most organizations that I worked with, it was very, very common, is when they got together, they had the quarterly business review, and they focused on the quarterly numbers, and it's quarterly and making the numbers. They rarely spend time on strategy. One of the recommendations we had is that you actually had 2 separate meetings. Don't mix the 2 together because, again, operation will trump strategy. So I get paid on my quarterly results. I'm not going to worry about all those changes to my business. So I run the business in the daytime. The nighttime job is making changes to the business, which is my strategy. So our recommendation is that you have a management calendar that pulls the pieces together, but keep them separate. Have a quarterly strategy review and have a quarterly business review. So let me just wrap up, and I have one final poll question. But the key thing is have a formal process, and a tool like OSSM actually really helps you automate that process. 2 is, so focus. Strategy is about making choices. Be very clear about that. You can't be all things to all people. It's too expensive to be, customer intimate, product innovative, and operational excellence. You can mix and match a little bit, but not fundamentally, if you know what I'm saying. The second piece is, great, I got these objectives. How am I going to measure that? Because people, they do what you measure, right? As I say, they do what you pay. So make sure that the measurements are put in place. You also align the organization, because it's the people on the front line that execute the strategy, if you will, not the boardroom per se. And then finally, that you integrate it to make it self-sustaining. Certainly with the balanced scorecard, you've got kind of a tool du jour. Executive comes in, says, hey, this is great, I got my change agenda. Well, they move on. What happens to your strategy management process? So the key thing is to bake it into your daily life so that you have both operations and strategy mixed together. So let me ask that one last poll question, poll question number 4, which is, how do you measure strategic and operational performance today? I thought that kind of helped set the stage for the Oracle Scorecard and Strategy Management product, because you really see how those really strategic, operational, financial planning start to come together. All right. Hope we have enough time. Okay. So hopefully I was able to set the stage or kind of context. Again, BI is very dynamic and very insight and analytically driven, a bit more ad hoc, and what is it telling me, and I'll follow that path and so forth. This tool is going to be, it needs a process. So that's why I wanted to start with what is your strategy management process? Just like you have a strategy, as a matter of fact, whether it's formal or informal, but you have a strategy, it's just what you're doing and what changes you're making to your business. So what I really want to look at here when we look at the product is alignment and accountability. Do I have all my resources aligned against the strategic priorities? And are people individually accountable for that? And obviously do their compensation systems aligned to that? The second piece is, as I'm executing the strategy with all the stuff that goes on with running the operations, I need a very strong communication and collaboration platform so that I communicate issues, challenges, or progress with the strategy. But number 2, I can collaborate with the team, because it is a team sport, to actually get things done for the initiatives to impact the targets in the KPIs. So the first thing you'll see is a mixture. I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster here. A mixture of KPI management and strategy management in the same tool. So it's funny. There's really no technical difference between a KPI and a strategic measure or an operational or strategic KPI. It's the same physical construct in terms of how they come together with threshold and so forth. It's really more of a business distinction as an operational or strategic. And often that comes with a time frame and, again, the changes that affect the KPI. So in the KPI world, it's kind of often backward looking, and that's a challenge to keep looking at. Make sure you have both leading and lagging, because if they're all lag, like typically most financial and customer metrics, you have no time to react. So it's very important to have some leading measures or KPIs put in place so that, hey, you know what? If I don't have enough new ideas or enough new scientists or enough new online web operators, I'm not going to fulfill my strategic vision 6 or 12 months from now. That's one of the things, the biggest thing is that, hey, you need some lead measures out there. And you also need a mixture of financial and non-financial KPIs. What I see a lot of companies are too much financial and not enough operational KPIs. Again, by definition, most financial metrics are lag. A lot of the non-financial ones are more lead. So flexible KPI reporting as things change over time, and the key thing, you get more insight when you do trend analysis. So the future is really represented with strategy management. Again, these are the choices that I'm making. Where am I taking the business? So I got to be able to communicate that, get people on board. I got to link strategic objectives all the way down to specific actions that are owned by people, that are measured. Then I need the feedback because things will not always go according to plan, or things need to adjust due to market conditions. How do I manage that? So they start to blend together in the middle here, where you have both really KPI management starting to come together. Again, the key part is as I mentioned before, alignment and accountability. You have scorecards that basically make it germane to me. Hey, I got this great corporate objective, but what has no bearing on me. I got to be able to cascade and make it meaningful to myself. And typically with performance management, align it to my compensation. So a couple of things that Steve will show you, again, is performance tracking, and how do you build the KPI, and what actions do you take if you, exceed or don't exceed a threshold. Accountability, who's responsible for what KPI, and collaboration, thread discussions, all the document were typically related to a project or an initiative. One of the key things in 11G is action links. So, predefining almost like a business process. What action do I want the system to take based on the result of some KPI measure? Agents, again, proactively, what do I want to have happen? Or like I want to push a KPI report or push a strategy report to somebody. Let's put an agent in place. Drill down to analysis, either financial, into Hyperion, or operational, and then you can put together KPI watch lists. So I may have a lot of KPIs, but a certain subset may be very specific to what I'm doing. I want that on my dashboard, so you can predefine that. So the strategy management part, again, as you'll see, is you can use, by the way, it's not just a balanced scorecard, but you can have a Six Sigma, Malcolm Baldrige, different types of scorecards, showing strategy, cause, and effect. Again, it's the same, very similar to KPI management in terms of scorecards, in terms of and collaboration. I think you'll also start to appreciate the other things you see in terms of integrating dashboards. Again, if you're doing your analysis, you got to be able to follow some sort of analytical path wherever it takes you. And a lot of the key things, what I've seen is there's so much on your plate, you need to start to automate some of these things. So you say, hey, what am I going to do if something happens? So you can put in place agents and scorecard actions to make adjustments to the strategy based on what's occurring in the operations. Key part is if I'm going to take an action, I need to typically annotate that to explain why these actions were taken. And I think this is one of the most powerful things right here, because at our work, our research was into integrating strategic, operational, financial planning and execution. So how do you actually, again, build a closed-loop performance management process? So the key thing in this tool is, so now I've got strategy, so I got strategic management, if you will. I've got all my KPIs, looking at my key operational processes and those operational KPIs. I now need to look at my funding side. Say, obviously, I have my annual operating plan, probably a 3-year, using like Hyperion strategic finance. I also need to make sure I funded my strategy appropriately, so I'm making funds available to the initiatives. All that's got to start to come together. So a tool like this actually allows you to see into my strategy, into my operations, and into my finance. I think is one of the key benefits of OSSM. So let me stop here and turn it over to Steve. Make sure I can do this the right way. And Steve will walk us through a day in the life of a company called Eden. There we go. So let me just turn this over to Steve.
All right. Let's see. Looks like my screen is up. Thank you, Eric. That was great information. We're going to take a look at Oracle Strategy, Scorecard and Strategy Management. I've already logged in in the interest of time, to kind of keep us moving along. And we're going to take a look at the Eden Corporation today. And one of the primary objectives of the Eden Corporation is really to become the leading supplier of personal electronic devices in the consumer electronics industry. And that is their primary objective. they've created 4 sub-objectives, and then we can see those objectives on the left-hand panel under the strategy box. One is to improve financial results. Second one is to enhance customer satisfaction. Third one is to streamline operations. And the fourth one is to increase employee effectiveness. So we're going to kind of take a look at those sub-objectives and see how we achieve success with that. So right now we're looking at 2009. So we're going to drill into the improved financial results objective. And we can see that that is supported by 2 additional objectives, which are the increased sales and the reduced costs. And if we drill down a little further, we can see that we have 3 KPIs under increased sales, one being revenue, average revenue per FTE, and build quantity. Excuse me. Let's take a look at the, well, overall, we can see, let me take a step back, I'm sorry. The Eden scorecard, right now they're scoring about 18 or 17.5 on their overall scorecard as far as achieving those objectives that they've detailed out. So they're not doing that well. So we're going to take a look and see where they're kind of coming up short and over the course of time where improvement lies for them. So let's take a look, drill into the average revenue per KPI, because that one is red. As you can see, when you have one critical indicator, the primary one becomes red as well. So on the revenue KPI, we can open that. We can see, see the volatility of the revenue and the target as compared to the actual. We seem to be staggered. Okay. As you can see on the right-hand side, the status is critical. The trending is downward, and so not great results there. So we had to kind of have to take a look at that a little bit further. From here, we can take a look at. Sorry, I'm having some connectivity issues. The related documents or content that Eric was speaking about, and we can take a look at a sales dashboard, which links us to some reporting, and we can see a dashboard straight from our scorecard and strategy management. And we can drill into a variety of areas. So we can drill into BizTech and see what's happening there, and then we can drill further into communications. So OSSM gives you the ability to toggle between the scorecard and the strategy management as well as OBIEE. You can get details on by year for cell phones, for example, and see exactly what's happening with as far as from a product detail perspective. I'm going to jump back into excuse me, jump back into scorecard here, and we can take a look at some additional KPIs that we have. And another one that we're having some issues that Eden seems to be having some issues with is order size. So we can take a look at that, and we can open this KPI and drill into a little further as well. And again, we can see sort of the history of what's happening here, the average order size. Here we have some functionality for comments for people to communicate as far as from a collaborative perspective. So it gives folks the ability to kind of see everyone to see what's going on with that. The next thing I'd like to kind of show real quick is the high-level strategy maps. High-level strategy maps basically bring together and kind of show the relationship between the objectives and the important KPIs. Also notice that we have the different types of lines that indicate. We have a legend on the bottom here that shows us the relationship that we have. So at this point we have some issues with, let's say, increased sales. We can see that there's a strong direct relationship between increasing sales and obviously improving financial results. So when increasing sales has a has a downward trend, improved financial results is. We can also drill into, let's say, the average order size and kind of see some of the details. We can also pull up some graphing right from the KPI within the strategy map. So there's a lot of flexibility. That's all. That a lot of functionality that comes with the strategy maps. Close it. And then we can see all the relationships between attrition and employee. For attrition and increased employee effectiveness, we have a inverse relationship, which makes sense because as attrition rate increases, our employee effectiveness would probably decrease with that. So we want to keep an eye on that, and that's one of our primary objectives, as we discussed earlier, as we looked at before, was to increase employee effectiveness. So the next thing we'd like to take a look at is the cause and effect map. The cause and effect map basically confirms the relationship between the hierarchy of the objectives and the measures, and it kind of creates the intuitive links in a high-level strategy map. We can see here again how we have the various KPIs related to each other. One of the few items that we have here is the percent early shift, which is in green, which we have. It looks like it's in good shape. So that would be a strategy. So next item would take a quick look at it would be the strategy tree. The strategy tree shows us basically the hierarchical relationship between the objectives and the KPIs. Excuse me. We can see how the overall scorecard is set up in a hierarchical manner. We have improved financial results. I think this gives an excellent layout as far as how things are related to each other and how the KPIs and the objectives are linked to each other. We can see improved financial results, again, linking to increased sales, reducing costs, and then from increased sales, we can see the revenue KPI, the average revenue per FTE, as well as the billed quantity. And if we look further into the the revenue KPI, we can see further analysis and information on why the revenue KPI is doing well. We can see that we're above our target. We're right on target as far as from a revenue perspective. And then if we move back across here, we can take a look at each of the individual objectives. The second one being enhanced customer service satisfaction. And again, one of the key KPIs there is the percent early shipped. And then we have the streamlined operations, as well as the increased employee effectiveness. So this gives a nice layout for folks to see where the KPIs and how the hierarchy is set up for a particular scorecard. Okay, I kind of ran. So if we go back and kind of take a look, we can drill into some of the additional KPIs. We can see percent early ship, fulfillment days. Under streamlined operations, we have fulfillment days as well as orders. And then under increased employee effectiveness, we have the number of employees which we have in green status, as well as the attrition rate and the average revenue, which we're using as a KPI in multiple objectives. And then from a secondary strategy tree, then we can jump back down again to a secondary strategy tree and kind of take a look at from the improved financial results. We can see again just the financial tree and how the targets of the KPIs and the layout and the results from those, and which ones we've been successful, which one Eden Corporation has been successful with, and which ones they have not been very successful with, which they need to kind of take a look at. So So those were the primary, I just wanted to kind of touch on those primary areas, the scorecard overall in general, as well as the objectives that support the KPIs and the sub-objectives, as well as the KPIs that we have there. We can kind of click through those pretty easily and see where we are. And then with OSSM, you have the cause and effect map, the high-level strategy map, as well as the strategy trees that really kind of bring all those concepts together to really kind of align, as Eric said, sort of the alignment and accountability and the communication and the collaboration for scorecard and strategy management. So I think that's about it for me. So if I could turn this back over to Amy. Are you going to take it from here, or do we go back to Eric?
Yeah, if you go back to Eric.
Okay, Eric. So I will change presenter.
And Brian, can we show the results of the polls? All right. I actually can't see them. Say, Brian, I think, I'm sorry, I need to make you the presenter to actually see the poll results because I can't see them. There we go. So it looks like the first result here is a bit mixed, but it looks like it's really two major ones. First is inability to appropriately measure, and love to jump into that a little bit further. Number two, and I see this a lot, lack of alignment, and often that comes from, first is what is the process to communicate the strategy effectively throughout an organization. Number two is how to make it meaningful in terms of specific KPIs or performance measures, if you will, but two, in terms of aligning to compensation and say, hey, guess what, you're going to be rewarded for successfully executing the strategy, frankly, in addition to doing your daily job in terms of operations. And what we'll do actually is we can send these to you as a summary and a wrap-up email to those of you who are able to attend today. Can we go to the next poll question? Interesting. So it says, like, if you will, the far majority here, 3/4 would be, do not have a specific process in place. I wish we could ask what were some of the reasons why. Sometimes, actually, what I've seen is if you don't have something like this, like I said before, you have a strategy, and these changes do occur. And the question is, how coherent is it? And it may be. I'm not trying to say anything bad, but again, one of the biggest things that I saw is that everyone's changing, and so either you're leading the change or your market or your competition is going to change you just by definition, right? Because things are moving forward no matter what. So interesting that still, if you will, I guess maybe use my definition that there's still a high number of informal strategy management process. But anyway, so can we look at the next question? How well do your employees understand your strategy and impact on strategy? Fair to well. So you guys do a pretty good job of saying, okay, given our strategy, whether it's product or customer or operational excellence, they have a pretty good understanding of what the strategy is. I think a good follow-up question would say is, how well does that sort of strategic intent get reflected in terms of the sort of annual performance measures and the people incented to execute against the strategy? And it's still a pretty good number that, a lot of people, if you will, on the front line aren't quite clear either what the strategy is or what their role is in terms of executing or their impact on the strategy. So next question. Okay, how do you measure strategic and operational performance today? That's actually a very large question. So the majority here have neither dashboards nor scorecards, and operational dashboards, but no strategic scorecards. So one of the biggest things you see is that you have to, when you top down, when you define a strategy, the next thing you do is say, okay, what's the best measure for this? And it doesn't matter whether or not you have the data for it, right? So it's like, hey, if this is critical for my business, I'm going to start collecting that data. And obviously, since we're in the BI business, really looking at sort of what's the sort of data infrastructure and the quality, because you got to get the right data to inform the KPIs and the measures to make sure I'm communicating progress against the strategy. Interesting. So looks like there's still, if you will, work to be done in having both scorecards and dashboards. Next question. We have one more question. So, all right. So let me now actually turn it back over to Amy. I just want to say thank you for your time this morning. And Amy, maybe you could wrap that up for us. I don't know if Amy can hear me, or she's on mute. So.
My apologies for that. I was muted. Oh, goodness. So I'm over here talking in my office all by myself. So thank you, Eric and Steve, and thank you, everyone else. So Oracle Scorecard and Strategy Management, and as Eric has done a great job for us, kind of defining the Oracle or the strategy process. Defining a strategy is way more about a process than it is about a technology. And Oracle came out with a great scorecard and strategy component of OBIEE 11g with their latest release. But the key thing to remember is it's really important to kind of define your strategy, before just putting in some great KPIs into the new technology and the new capabilities that Oracle has with OBIEE 11g. And that was kind of one of the points that we wanted to make sure came across today on the webinar. And one other thing that I want to kind of make sure we talk about here is the Oracle Business Intelligence Foundation. So the foundation is really kind of all the components of OBI that Oracle has, and that's kind of a bundling. So if you're an OBIEE customer today and you're looking at moving up to OBIEE 11g, the Scorecard and Strategy Management is the one component that is not necessarily just part of the maintenance agreement when you move up to OBIEE 11g. So it's not part of, it doesn't just automatically come with the upgrade and part of your maintenance agreement. So it's the piece that you have to pay for in addition. So if you move up to OBIEE 11g and you purchase the additional foundation, you will get the Scorecard and Strategy Management. And then obviously customers that are looking at implementing Scorecard and Strategy Management are maybe new to OBIEE. If they purchase the foundation, obviously they'll get the Scorecard and Strategy components of OBIEE 11g as well. So that was just one point that I wanted to make today. Eric, could you move to the next slide? So some additional things, some additional BICG announcements. One thing I just want to say, check out our new website. We're very proud of it. So we went live a couple weeks back with a new look and feel. So check out www.biconsultinggroup.com. We have RSS feeds that you can kind of just plug into now and get the latest news, events, anytime we're publishing new webinars and all that good stuff. So it's kind of a new look and feel for us, and we're excited about that. We also announced some new webinars. So we're doing another webinar in 2 weeks, and that one is Oracle Business Intelligence for SAP customers. And we're going to be talking just about various different options, if you are an SAP customer, to leverage Oracle Business Intelligence, whether that be the new 797 BI applications, or if you have SAP BW today, leveraging OBIEE on top of SAP BW. So we'll just be kind of exploring the different options out there for you. The pros, the cons, the goods, the bads, all that good stuff. And then on March 29th, we'll be doing a webinar on OBIEE 11g tips and tricks. So we've got a lot of things that we've uncovered working with OBIEE 11g. We've got a few customers that are currently in production. We've got a number of customers that were in flight and getting into production, as well as we've got a pretty extensive lab environment with OBIEE 11g. We've uncovered some hidden chart types. We've uncovered a lot of other tips and tricks that we're very excited to share with you, so you don't want to miss that one. We do have additional webinars that we will be announcing very soon as well. We've got 2 that we're looking at doing in April and 2 that we're looking at doing in May also. So if you hop out to our new website and you just plug into our RSS feeds, you'll just automatically be notified when we put those new webinars out on our website. Finally, we do have one more workshop in our workshop series. I think we've done a total of 19 workshops since October. So it's been fun. It's been a great time. And our final workshop here is in Columbus, Ohio on March 17th. And again, that's going to be OBIEE 11g and the BI applications. So don't want to miss that one. If you're in Ohio area, you can register for that on our website as well.
Well, thank you.
And actually, move to the next slide.
Oh, my fault.
All right, so just want to thank everybody for attending today. Obviously, your time is valuable, and we greatly appreciate it. We, on all of our webinars, give out 2 free training tokens, and I do have the 2 lucky winners. We have Patrick Amon from Gander Mountain and Jim Burnham from Gartner, and we will be notifying you shortly after today's call with what you need to do in order to get and receive your free training. So this will be eligible for any of our 19 courses, whether it be the 11G courses or BI application courses or any of the other courses that we have available online. So just want to thank everyone again for attending the webinar. And on that note, I will hand it back over to Eric and Steve, and we have had some questions come in during today's webinar, and they will do their best to answer some of those questions in the next 5 minutes. So Eric, do you want to start?
Sure. I'll take the easy one. Will the PowerPoint presentation, and thank you for asking the questions, by the way, and again, we have a few minutes here, and please feel free to answer, enter any questions, let's say, regarding the Oracle Scorecard and Strategy Management product, or questions about a strategy management process. More than happy to answer those with you. The second thing is if you have questions after the webinar, feel free to give us an email, and again, we'll respond back to you. But first question is, will the PowerPoint slides be available for download after the meeting? Yes, they will, and we'll make those available to you, probably via email. And the second question here is, so are the scorecards part of the basic OBIEE 11g, or is it an add-on? And Amy, would you like to answer that because it's part of the BI Foundation suite. So as Amy mentioned, actually, it's if you're looking just to upgrade, it's actually an additional product that you would purchase, and it's now part of the standard BI Foundation suite that you would license from Oracle. So, if you will, it's not a standard part of 11g. It's an add-on, but it is also part of the new BI Foundation suite from Oracle. A couple other questions that we had, just relating a bit to the strategy management process. One, as you saw, a scorecard with numerous objectives is to be realistic. What's a good number of objectives to have, and how many measures. And again, since it's about focus, our experiences was always around about 10 to 15 objectives for a strategy map, because each one of those get assigned out to somebody. So you have an objective owner, you have perhaps a perspective owner like finance, customer, process, internal, and you also have measure owners and initiative owners. And so you don't want that to become too cumbersome, because they have to coordinate. Because if you get together every quarter to do a quarterly strategy review, you really only have so much time to read the objectives of the measures. A second question is how do you, we talked about alignment, and one of the key areas is compensation, and that's always a sensitive subject. Is when do you actually start to align compensation against strategic or strategy execution? And that's a bit more dependent on the culture of your organization as to when you would actually do that. A lot of companies don't do that up front because they want to iron that out and obviously make sure you have the right measures in place and get it seasoned through either a couple of business cycles or certainly 2 or 3 quarterly strategy reviews, which you say about 9 to 12 months, so that you say, hey, do I have the right strategy? Do I have the right measures? And then I'll start to say, hey, here's how you're going to get paid against executing that strategy. So I guess one last question I got here is that how do you roll out or implement a kind of a strategy management process? So in my experience, again, it's more based on necessity. Some companies have a burning platform and jump right in and say, hey, we've got to change or we're going to go out of business. Another people do it, kind of phase it, with specific divisions to kind of get it, again, seasoned before they roll it out corporate-wide. So it's really more dependent on kind of the situation you have to go in a burning platform. And by the way, regardless of the specific approach, you have to make the case for change, right? Because change is always hard. People are going to have to understand, why am I making this change? Why am I changing how I do my job? Why do I care? And things like that. So you got to have a case for change for any strategy management process. All right. Are there samples for KPI?
Yes.
Steve?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, we're using sort of the sample applications that are installed with 11g, and they have those sample KPIs. And the KPIs are pretty easy to develop. It's really what you can put them together fairly easily with thresholds against various sets of data. So not a very difficult process. One of the other questions that we had was how are the relationships determined, and that is basically you create those based on your organization on how you want the scorecard and the KPIs and the objectives to kind of roll together. So you create that hierarchy. Let me see here.
And the last question is, there are white papers on the scorecard and strategy management available from Oracle. So I certainly go to their website. There's certainly a lot of papers available on, if you will, the balanced scorecard approach to strategy management. And I'd just like to make an offer to folks here on the call today or the webinar today to feel free to send us some questions, because this is an area that we work in, obviously. Because we have obviously do work in BI, which covers both really all 3 areas of EPM or performance management, dashboards, and scorecards. And more than happy to engage in a dialogue, because it's certainly an area of interest. So with that, it's 2 o'clock my time. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, to wrap up, we will send you an email with the result of the polls. And again, just feel free to drop us any lines or questions that you have. So thank you, everybody.